There is a moment in every man's life when he realizes something powerful about women. They pay attention not when you chase them, not when you compliment them, not when you show them your effort, but when you master the silent, disciplined art of not reacting. Ignoring a woman is not about immaturity or revenge. It is about controlling the one thing she cannot manipulate, your attention. And once you understand how deeply your attention affects a woman's psychology, you will never look at attraction the same way again. Because here's the truth most men never learn. The moment you stop investing your energy into a woman who is unsure, disrespectful, or emotionally chaotic, her entire perception of you changes. She goes from confident to uncertain, from secure to questioning, from relaxed to alert. Not because you punished her, but because you removed something she thought she owned. Your emotional availability. Women don't fear losing a man. They fear losing a man who was once emotionally present. And when that presence disappears, even quietly, the impact is far louder than anything you could say. But ignoring a woman is an art, not a tactic. Most men do it wrong. They ignore out of anger, desperation, or emotional reaction. They ignore loudly, obviously hoping she notices. That is not stoic ignoring. That is insecurity disguised as discipline. And women read that instantly. The real power comes from a different place. A place so controlled, so focused, and so calm that she cannot decipher whether you're ignoring her, evolving past her, or simply uninterested in the chaos she brings. A woman becomes confused not when you disappear, but when your reason for disappearing is a mystery. True stoic ignoring is not about absence. It is about shifting your attention toward your goals, your discipline, your growth, your mission. When she feels that shift, she senses something far more threatening than silence. She senses progress without her. And progress is the one thing women cannot ignore, because when a man grows in silence, a woman feels it in her gut. She notices the change in your tone, your presence, your reactions, your priorities. You don't chase. You don't try. You don't argue. You don't ask for explanations. You don't negotiate. You simply rise. And when a woman sees you rising without her, she begins sinking into curiosity, doubt, and regret. Ignoring a woman becomes powerful when it is paired with indifference. It becomes unforgettable when it is paired with self-respect. It becomes magnetic when it is paired with discipline, because the woman who once felt confident in your attention now feels something far more unsettling. The possibility that she misread you, misunderstood you, undervalued you, and may never be able to get the same version of you again. This video will show you exactly how to master the art of ignoring in a way that triggers attraction, commands respect, and positions you as a man whose silence speaks louder than other men's words. Not out of spite, not out of anger, but out of strength. If you get this right, you will never chase validation again. You will never be manipulated again. You will never be overlooked again. Because when you master the art of ignoring women, you master the art of controlling yourself, and that is the highest form of power a man can possess. Before we start, a quick reminder. The real transformation doesn't happen on YouTube. It happens inside the community. If these videos have opened your eyes, what's inside will rebuild your mindset completely. It's not just a course, it's a brotherhood. A private space where men master attraction, emotional control, and the psychology of power. You don't join for a month. You join for life. Every future course, book, and lesson is yours forever. No subscriptions, no limits. Just one decision that changes your direction. If you're serious about growth, discipline, and purpose, click the link below. Join the community. Enroll once, grow forever. Let's dive in. Section 1. Why ignoring women works instantly. The psychology behind attention and power. Ignoring a woman is powerful, not because silence itself has magic, but because your attention is a currency, and most men give it away without understanding its value. A woman does not chase you because of who you are. She chases you because of how she feels in your presence. And that feeling is built on something men rarely control, the flow of their attention. When you ignore a woman correctly, calmly, without ego, without anger, you are not punishing her. You are resetting the emotional economy. You are reminding her that your attention is earned, not owed. And this realization hits her deeper than any words ever could. A woman feels a man's attention like warmth. It gives her certainty, comfort, validation, security, and emotional structure. When you constantly respond, constantly check in, constantly try to fix things. You become predictable. Predictability kills attraction because it removes tension. But the moment you pull back, the moment you become less accessible, the moment she no longer feels the full warmth of your presence, her mind activates in ways she cannot consciously control. Women are biologically attuned to trace where a man's attention flows, and when that flow stops, she feels the absence as pressure. The psychology is simple. Humans value what's scarce and take for granted what's abundant. A man who overshares, overcommunicates, and overinvests becomes emotionally cheap in her eyes. Not because he lacks value, but because he presents his value without boundaries. But a man who knows when to pull back, when to detach, when to redirect his energy toward himself suddenly becomes rare. He becomes selective. He becomes a challenge again, and challenge is what sparks female curiosity, excitement, and pursuit. This is why ignoring a woman works instantly. It interrupts her emotional pattern. If she expected you to react emotionally, but you remain calm, confusion begins. If she expected you to chase, but you step back, curiosity begins. If she expected you to fight for her attention, but you focus on your goals instead, attraction begins. When you stop doing what she predicted, she stops taking you for granted and starts wondering what changed in you. And wondering is the root of all female interest. Women don't fall for men they fully understand. They fall for men who create emotional contrast. Men who are warm at times, silent at others, present in the moment, but never dependent, connected, yet self-contained. Ignoring her is not about vanishing. It's about restoring this contrast. It's about giving her the space to feel your absence so she can revalue your presence. Ignoring works when you are not acting from fear, but from discipline. When you are not running away but rising above. When you are not withdrawing emotionally, but redistributing your energy into yourself. As your focus shifts from her to your mission, your growth, your peace, she senses the change even if you say nothing. Women notice emotional momentum faster than men notice physical movement. When your attention stops moving toward her, she feels it immediately. And this is the core of male power. Not the ability to demand attention, but the ability to withhold it gracefully. When you master the psychology behind ignoring, you stop trying to control women and instead control yourself. And when a man controls himself, he becomes the type of man women respect, desire, and chase. Section 2. How to ignore a woman. The Stoic way. Calm, silent, controlled, and impossible to misread. Most men think ignoring a woman means disappearing, blocking her, acting cold, or pretending not to care. That is not Stoic ignoring. That is emotional immaturity dressed as strength. Stoic ignoring is an art because it has nothing to do with anger, ego, or proving a point. It is a quiet shift in your behavior that communicates one message clearly. You are no longer accessible on a level she took for granted. You are present but not available. You are calm but not passive. You are polite but not invested. And this shift creates a psychological tension that no woman is comfortable with. The Stoic way of ignoring begins with internal control. You don't ignore her to provoke a reaction. You ignore her to protect your peace. You don't retreat to manipulate her. You retreat to regain emotional balance. You don't pull back to play games. You pull back because a man who values himself refuses to beg for attention. This mindset is what makes the tactic powerful. She senses the difference between a man who is emotionally wounded and a man who is emotionally disciplined. One repels her, the other draws her in. When you ignore her the Stoic way, your communication becomes measured, not reactive. You take longer to respond, not because you're trying to frustrate her, but because you genuinely prioritize your life over her validation. You stop initiating conversations, not to punish her, but because you invest your energy only where it is respected. You speak less. You give less detail. You reveal less emotion, not through coldness, but through composure. Every interaction becomes intentional instead of impulsive. Stoic ignoring is about emotional neutrality. When she tries to provoke you with games, tests, or mixed signals, you don't rise to the bait. You remain unmoved, unshaken, unreadable. She sends a dry message. You respond with calm simplicity. She tries to create tension. You diffuse it. Without engaging emotionally, she pulls back. You don't chase. She becomes inconsistent. You become distant. This consistency in your composure is what destabilizes her emotionally because she cannot figure out whether you lost interest, gained strength, or evolved beyond her influence. Another key element of stoic ignoring is maintaining presence without availability. You don't vanish or cut off connection. You simply limit access. You show her that you are still in your world, still in your mission, still in your discipline. But she no longer holds the central position she once occupied. This forces her to confront the possibility that she miscalculated your dependence. And nothing confuses a woman more than realizing she no longer has the emotional power she assumed she did. Stoic ignoring also involves redirecting your emotional energy into your growth. When your silence is filled with progress, working out, improving your finances, mastering your craft, elevating your lifestyle, she feels the shift, even if you never mention it. Women are incredibly sensitive to changes in a man's life direction. When you ignore her while your life improves, her mind ties your absence to your evolution, and that creates a fear far deeper than losing your attention, the fear of being left behind. You don't ignore her loudly, you ignore her elegantly. You don't ignore her to punish, you ignore her to elevate. You don't ignore her because you don't care. You ignore her because you care about yourself more. This is the Stoic way, calm, powerful, controlled, and impossible to misread. A man who practices this form of ignoring doesn't become less attractive, he becomes unforgettable. Section 3. What women secretly feel when you ignore them, the emotional spiral. They never admit. When a man ignores a woman correctly with calmness, emotional discipline, and a shift in priorities, something begins inside her that she will never confess out loud. On the surface, she may appear unfazed. She may act indifferent, confident, or even playful. But beneath that exterior, a quiet storm begins to form. This storm is built on confusion, curiosity, insecurity, and a sudden loss of control. Emotions that women try to hide even from themselves. The first feeling she experiences when you ignore her is uncertainty. Women crave emotional clarity. They want to understand how you feel, where you stand, and what your behavior means. When you were attentive and available, she had a clear understanding of your position, but when that attention suddenly disappears, her emotional certainty collapses. She begins questioning her assumptions. Did he lose interest? Did I push him away? Did I misread him? This uncertainty becomes the seed of confusion. As you maintain your calm silence, that uncertainty evolves into curiosity. She becomes increasingly aware of your absence. She wonders what you're doing, who you're talking to, and why you haven't reached out. Curiosity is a powerful emotional trigger. It pulls her attention toward you without your effort. Women are storytellers in their minds. When information is missing, they fill the gaps with imagination, and imagination is often far more intense than reality. From curiosity comes insecurity, not because she lacks confidence, but because your change in behavior disrupts her emotional rhythm. Women are highly attuned to shifts in energy. When the warmth of your attention fades, she feels cold. When your tone becomes neutral, she senses emotional distance. When your responses slow down, she fears losing relevance. This insecurity makes her reflect on her behavior, her value, and her place in your life. And that reflection is where attraction begins to rebuild. But the most powerful feeling she experiences when you ignore her is loss of control. Women don't fear losing men. They fear losing control over the emotional direction of the connection. When you stop reacting, stop chasing, and stop needing her validation, she loses the script she used to predict your responses. She can no longer anticipate what you'll do next. That unpredictability disrupts her emotional balance. An emotional imbalance creates desire because desire is born from tension, not comfort. As these emotions intertwine, something unexpected happens. She begins to miss you. Not because you vanished, but because you created space for her mind to wander toward you. Missing someone is not about time apart. It's about the emotional vacuum created when a presence once felt deeply becomes temporarily out of reach. Your silence becomes a mirror that reflects her actions back to her. She starts remembering your best qualities, not your flaws. She starts noticing the absence of your energy, not the presence of your mistakes. Women fall into an emotional spiral, not through loud actions, but through subtle shifts. Your silence becomes her puzzle. Your stability becomes her curiosity. Your self-respect becomes her attraction. And your lack of emotional reaction becomes the very thing that awakens hers. She won't admit this spiral. She won't tell you she's thinking about you. She won't reveal that she is questioning herself. but internally she is experiencing every one of these emotions slowly, intensely, and silently. This is why ignoring works. Not because you disappear, but because you remove the comfort she once relied on. And comfort removed becomes desire awakened. Section 4. The biggest mistakes men make when ignoring women and why they ruin everything. Most men don't realize that ignoring a woman is only powerful when done with precision, calmness, and self-control. The moment emotion enters the strategy, the entire effect collapses, because ignoring a woman is not about silence, it's about what your silence communicates. And too many men send the wrong message without even realizing it. They think they're being strong, disciplined, or mysterious, when in reality, they're coming across as childish, insecure, or desperate for attention. These mistakes don't just weaken your position, they magnify hers. The biggest mistake men make is ignoring emotionally instead of strategically. When a man feels hurt or rejected, he often withdraws to protect himself, but his withdrawal is fueled by anger, disappointment, or anxiety. This kind of ignoring is loud even when it's silent. A woman can feel the emotional charge behind it. She senses the tension, the resentment, the hope that she will notice. And once she feels that you're ignoring her for a reaction, the power dynamic flips. You are no longer in control. Your silence exposes your weakness. The second mistake men make is being inconsistent. They ignore her one day, then suddenly respond with warmth the next. They pull back briefly, then rush forward as soon as they feel her slipping away. This inconsistency doesn't confuse women. It amuses them. It tells her that your silence was an act, not a standard, and women lose respect quickly when they see a man pretending to be strong only to collapse at the first sign of attention. Consistency is where the power lies. If you can't maintain the frame, you don't have one. Another major mistake is broadcasting the silence. Some men post quotes online, show off they're unbothered, or try to make her jealous by being flashy or overly active. Women read right through this. Anything that looks like an announcement or performance immediately kills the mystery. Stoic ignoring works because it is invisible. It doesn't seek attention, validation, or reaction. The moment your silence becomes a performance, she knows exactly what you're doing, and the effect dies instantly. A fourth mistake is ignoring her while secretly waiting for her to reach out. Women have emotional radar. They can feel when a man's silence has an agenda. If you're ignoring her, but constantly checking your phone, wondering when she'll message, hoping she notices your absence, then your energy betrays you. Your silence must come from indifference, not expectation. If you're still emotionally tied to her reaction, you're not ignoring, you're stalling. And stalling is not attractive. Detachment is. The fifth mistake, the one most men don't even realize they make, is neglecting self-improvement during the silence. Ignoring a woman without improving your life is just avoiding conflict. But ignoring her while your body, mindset, finances, discipline, and lifestyle elevate, that's what makes the silence feel different. Women feel a man's momentum. They feel when he is rising. They feel when he is emotionally unavailable because he is too focused on becoming better. This is what triggers attraction, curiosity, and regret. Ignoring without growth is noise. Ignoring with growth is power. The final mistake is breaking silence at the wrong moment. When a man gets bored, lonely, or impatient, he often reaches out first. This ruins everything, because the moment you break the silence out of weakness, she knows the truth. You weren't in control, you were simply waiting. The man who maintains silence until he genuinely feels stable, grounded, and detached becomes a man women take seriously. But the man who breaks first becomes the man she doesn't fear losing. Ignoring a woman isn't a game. It's a reflection of your discipline, your boundaries, and your emotional independence. When you avoid these mistakes, your silence stops being a tactic. It becomes a language women hear clearly, and the message is simple. Your attention has value, and not everyone gets access to it. Section 5. The transformation. What happens to you when you master the art of ignoring? The greatest misconception about ignoring women is believing it's a tactic designed to change her. In reality, the most powerful transformation happens inside you. When you master the art of ignoring, you begin shedding the behaviors, attachments, and emotional habits that once made you vulnerable, reactive, or easy to manipulate. Ignoring women the right way forces you to confront your own weaknesses, strengthen your discipline, and separate your identity from the validation you used to chase. What begins as a strategy soon becomes a lifestyle. a quiet evolution that shapes you into a different kind of man entirely. The first transformation that happens is emotional detachment. Not in a cold or disconnected sense, but in the stoic sense of understanding that your emotions are internal, not external. You stop depending on women's reactions for your sense of peace. You stop needing instant responses to feel secure. You stop giving your power to someone else's mood. When you master the art of ignoring, you learn that self-control is not about denying your feelings, but about refusing to let those feelings dictate your behavior. This emotional detachment becomes your armor in a world where most men crumble at the slightest emotional pressure. The second transformation is self-respect. You begin valuing your time, your energy, and your attention differently. You no longer tolerate disrespect, inconsistency, or emotional games. Ignoring women becomes easy, not because you don't care, but because you refuse to abandon your standards. Most men struggle with boundaries because they think boundaries push women away. But when you master ignoring, you learn that boundaries don't push the right women away. They filter out the wrong ones. Your self-respect becomes non-negotiable, and that alone separates you from the average man. The third transformation is focus. When you stop chasing women, your mind is forced back onto your goals, your mission, your improvement. Your energy flows inward again instead of leaking outward. You start waking up earlier, training harder, thinking clearer, moving with purpose. The silence you used to spend waiting for replies is now redirected into building the life you should have been building all along. Women feel this shift. They sense when a man becomes driven. They sense when he is no longer available for distraction. The more focused you become, the more attractive you become, not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because purpose has its own gravity. The fourth transformation is inner strength. Ignoring a woman the right way forces you to calm your fears, your ego, your emotional impulses. You learn patience. You learn discipline. You learn that silence is not weakness, it's power. You become mentally stronger because you stop seeking emotional shortcuts. You become spiritually grounded because your peace is no longer dependent on external validation. You become harder to manipulate because you no longer need approval to feel whole. This kind of strength radiates and women notice it instantly. The fifth transformation, the most important, is identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who reacts to women and start seeing yourself as someone women react to. You stop placing women above your mission. You stop sacrificing self-respect for attention. You stop confusing desire with dependency. The man who masters ignoring becomes a man who commands respect simply by existing. His silence means something. His presence means something. His absence means something. He is no longer defined by how women treat him. He is defined by how he treats himself. And here is the truth every man eventually realizes. When you master the art of ignoring women, you don't become colder. You become clearer. You don't become harder. You become stronger. You don't become detached. You become disciplined. Ignoring a woman is not about withholding affection. It's about withholding access until someone proves they deserve it. And the moment you embrace this mindset, you stop chasing women, and women start recognizing the kind of man who no longer needs to. This is the transformation. This is the shift. This is the power in the end. Mastering the art of ignoring women has nothing to do with games, manipulation, or punishment. It has everything to do with discovering a version of yourself that refuses to be controlled by emotion, insecurity, or the need for external validation. Because the truth is simple yet difficult for most men to accept. Women do not lose respect for a man because he ignores them. They lose respect when he cannot control himself. And when you learn to hold your silence, you learn to hold your power. Most men chase, react, argue, and over-explain because they fear losing a woman. But the man who is not afraid to lose her is the man she fears losing the most. When you master the art of ignoring, you step into that rare category. The man who is no longer moved by temporary emotions. The man who no longer bends for attention. The man who no longer negotiates his worth. That kind of man becomes magnetic. Not because he tries to be, but because he embodies a discipline that women rarely see. Your silence becomes more than silence. It becomes a message that says you refuse to beg, you refuse to chase, you refuse to participate in emotional games, you refuse to lower your standards for temporary comfort. When a woman senses this, even if she does not admit it, she feels something shift inside her. The dynamic changes. The power centers change. the emotional balance changes. You become the one with the frame, the one with the control, the one who dictates the direction of the connection without force, without words, without needing to raise your voice. And this is what separates stronger men from average men. Average men try to win women. Strong men let women reveal whether they belong in their lives or not. When you ignore appropriately, with calmness, with purpose, with intention, you are not pushing her away. You are letting the truth reveal itself. A woman who values you will move closer. A woman who only valued your attention will fall back. Ignoring is not a test for her. It is clarity for you.